It started with a single call and ended with broken futures. At exactly 9:14 a.m., on a humid Tuesday morning in Nairobi, Margaret Wanjiru froze as the trembling words escaped her lips. "You wired how much?" The blood drained from her face. Her voice, normally resolute and commanding as chief financial officer of one of Africa's most trusted humanitarian aid organizations, cracked like brittle glass. 7.8 million, ma'am, replied a junior finance officer in a low voice, barely above a whisper. He couldn't look her in the eye. Per the CEO's instructions, she gripped the edge of her desk as if the polished mahogany might anchor her to reality. But the room kept spinning, warping, swallowing itself in dread. The window behind her overlooked the bustling Kibera slum, where the charity had built schools, fed thousands of families, and promised dignity where none had been before. That money, that 7.8 million, wasn't just capital. It was hope. Food for war-displaced children in South Sudan, a new water filtration system in Turkana, emergency medical tents for refugee camps in Garissa. It had taken years to raise those funds. Now, in a matter of hours, it had all vanished, sucked into the digital abyss of untraceable crypto wallets. Her thoughts were spinning. Who gave the order? Why hadn't she been consulted? Where was Anthony, the real CEO? That was when the second blow landed. He was on the call. Margaret, the young officer, insisted. We saw him video call. Secure line. He even greeted us in Swahili like he always does. Same voice, same smile. He said we needed to act fast to avoid international sanctions, that it was an emergency. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. No, not possible. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from paralysis. It was Anthony, the real Anthony, the actual CEO. He was calling from Geneva. Margaret stared at the phone, then at the young officer. Her heart felt like it had been crushed in a steel vise. And that's when the truth began to dawn. What they'd seen wasn't real. What they'd believed wasn't real. Nothing was real, except the loss. Just 24 hours before, Margaret had been standing on stage, smiling proudly as she handed over solar panels to a girls' school in Samburu. She had no idea her world was already unraveling behind the scenes. The Nairobi office had always felt like a fortress, not of brick and steel, but of trust. Every desk told a story, the procurement manager who once fled a war zone, now reviewing vendor contracts, the IT officer who once lived in a refugee camp himself, now securing satellite internet for rural hospitals. And above them all was Anthony Otieno, CEO, visionary, friend. He had grown the organization from a two-person operation in a dusty shared office to a respected international aid leader. He was beloved, unquestioned. His presence, even digital, was a command. So when he called in via secure video, appearing in full holographic projection from what looked like a sleek European conference hall, no one doubted it. Not the finance team. Not even Margaret. And why would they? His accent, his mannerisms, his signature phrase, "Let's keep our promise to the people," even the Kenyan flag pin on his lapel. But now her instincts screamed. This wasn't a hack. It was something darker. A manipulation so perfect it didn't just steal their money, it hijacked their faith. Her fingers trembled as she picked up her phone. "Anthony," she said, voice cracking. "I just landed. Is everything all right?" His voice sounded genuinely confused, concerned even. Margaret felt like she was underwater. Every second now mattered. "They saw you. Yesterday. In a call. You told them to wire the funds." There was a pause. Silence so thick she could hear the air conditioning hum. "Margaret," he said slowly, "I've been in flight since Sunday night. I haven't made any calls." The room tilted. Margaret stood in the middle of the office, stunned into stillness, as everything she trusted, her team, their security protocols, her own judgment, crumbled beneath her. Outside, the sun blazed over Nairobi. Inside, a A storm of doubt, betrayal, and fear rolled in. And just as she reached for her laptop to investigate, an alert popped up in the corner of the screen. Second holographic session scheduled in 20 minutes. Secure credentials required. Her blood ran cold. Margaret didn't breathe. Her fingers hovered just above her keyboard, frozen in hesitation. The calendar alert blinked on the screen like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. Second holographic session, T19 minutes. She pressed her palms together, fighting the rising tide of nausea. Everything in her training told her to escalate to security protocol. But what did protocol say about your CEO appearing in a video call, giving direct orders and turning out to be nothing more than smoke and pixels? She stormed into the IT wing of the Nairobi office, the once familiar layout now feeling foreign and threatening. Behind the rows of softly humming servers and wide monitors sat Moses, their cybersecurity lead. He was young, brilliant, and always humming old reggae tunes. But this morning, there was no music in the air. "Moses, stop what you're doing," she snapped. "Pull the full logs from yesterday's holographic call. I need everything: source IP, voice model, visual stream metadata. All of it." He blinked, surprised by her tone. "Yes, ma'am." A few keystrokes. Silence. Then a low whistle. "That's not possible," Moses muttered. "What?" The call didn't come from our usual cloud servers. This was rerouted through a decentralized satellite relay system, masked IP, multi-layer encryption. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. Margaret's mind raced. She remembered the face of Anthony from the call. Every detail had been perfect. The familiar furrow in his brow when discussing budgets, the rhythm of his speech, even a light cough he'd developed recently during a climate summit in Marrakesh. How could they have known that? Could it have been recorded and played back, she asked. No way. It was live. I double-checked yesterday. He responded to real-time questions, blinked, smiled, even referenced specific finance reports from last week. She felt a chill crawl across her shoulders. Moses continued. This was a full AI-generated real-time hologram. We're talking about a neural mimic of his face, synced with speech generation tied to his digital footprint. This wasn't just a deepfake, it was adaptive. It learned during the call. Margaret's voice came out like a whisper. So they cloned him. Moses hesitated. Not just him, his entire digital self. 20 minutes later, the staff began assembling in the small, glass-walled conference room. Most didn't know what had happened yet, but word was spreading fast, and now they were about to face their CEO again. Margaret stood near the back, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Sweat clung to her temples despite the AC. Then it happened. With a shimmer and a low hum, the room lit up with blue-tinged light. A figure materialized in the center, Anthony, or rather, the version of him that had lied to their faces. "Good morning, team," he said warmly. "I'm sorry to call on short notice again. We have a critical update. Our negotiations with the ransomware group require a second transfer. This time, it's $4 million. We must act fast." Gasps, whispers, confused glances, but to most in the room, he looked exactly the same, confident, authoritative, familiar. Until Margaret stepped forward. "Stop," she said, firm, cold. The hologram turned toward her, smiled. "Margaret, I know this is difficult, but you of all people understand the urgency. We don't want our donor data leaked, do we?" She took a slow step forward. "You're not Anthony." The hologram's smile didn't falter. "Let's stay focused on our mission. Time is." "Shut it down, Moses," she shouted. Behind the glass, Moses slammed the emergency disconnect. The projection fizzled, then vanished in a hiss of static. Gasps erupted, confusion, silence, shock. Margaret turned to face the room. "That wasn't Anthony. We've been scammed. The first transfer was fake, and we just came this close to losing more." The silence thickened. Someone started crying. Another whispered, "How could this happen?" Margaret steadied herself. "Because they didn't just hack our systems, they hacked our trust." Moses was already pulling up forensic data when Margaret joined him again. They accessed old video footage, internal documents, audio samples from conference recordings, he muttered. And wait. He stopped typing. Margaret leaned in. "What is it?" "They didn't just clone Anthony's voice. They also replicated your voice?" "Margaret, there's a file here. You were scheduled to join a call tomorrow with the UN board. There's a script." Margaret's pulse thumped in her ears. The attackers weren't done. They were preparing to impersonate her next. Margaret stared at the script on the screen, her throat tightening with every word she read. "Dear board members, as acting CFO, I confirm the second emergency disbursement of $4 million. Per Anthony's guidance, I've already validated the crypto wallet through our internal cybersecurity lead. Please proceed immediately." It was written in her cadence, her phrasing, the formal yet empathetic tone she'd perfected over years of navigating tense meetings and donor briefings. Even her signature sign-off. "In service, Margaret Wanjiru." "They even copied my sign-off," she whispered. "They scraped everything," Moses said grimly. "Your emails, Zoom calls, webinars, past conference panels, even a podcast interview you did last year. They fed it into a speech synthesis model. It's you, Margaret, but not you." Her heart pounded. It was a strange, terrifying feeling, like looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger wink back. She thought of the UN board meeting set for tomorrow. 20 global representatives who'd trusted her with tens of millions in humanitarian funds. If they received a holographic projection of Margaret confirming a transfer, they'd obey without question, just like her staff had with the fake Anthony. This wasn't just a one-time hit, she said aloud, realization dawning. This is a campaign. Coordinated, multi-phase, global. Moses nodded. They've already built the pipeline. They can deploy any version of you or Anthony, anywhere, at any time, just by clicking a button. Margaret's thoughts spiraled. How had they let this happen? Her mind went back over the past few weeks, piecing together details like fragments of a broken mirror. There'd been strange glitches in their internal scheduling platform. A few unusual login logs brushed off as harmless anomalies. Then there was the so-called vendor audit email request that had come in just a month ago, asking for internal access to confirm compliance. She remembered feeling mildly suspicious, but not enough to investigate. They hadn't breached the charity with brute force. They'd walked in slowly, silently. One phishing email here, one login credential there. They had watched, listened, learned, until they could become them. It was an invasion of identity, not of systems. "We need to alert the board immediately," Margaret said. "And the banks, freeze everything. Full lockdown. Any external call or message claiming to be from me or Anthony, it needs verification from 2 staff members. No exceptions." "Got it," Moses said, already typing. "I'll also deploy biometric challenge response verification for all leadership-level calls. Retina and voice print match." She turned to go, then stopped. Wait, what if they already got voice print samples? What if they can spoof that too? Moses hesitated, then admitted, if their model's advanced enough, maybe. But deepfake audio still struggles with layered stress patterns and biometric liveness cues. In English, if we can challenge the speaker in real time with stress-based cues like unpredictable emotional tones or on-the-fly math problems, we might detect the fake. For now, that's our best shot. Margaret didn't like the odds, but they had no choice. That night, she stayed in her office long after the sun had disappeared over Nairobi. The streets buzzed with life just outside, vendors shouting, matatus honking, laughter echoing between buildings. But inside the office, all was still. She opened her laptop, staring at the screen as if willing it to offer answers. Then, reluctantly, she clicked on the file Moses had recovered. Wanjiru AI V3 Holo Test MP4. The screen lit up, and there she was. Not on a webcam, not grainy or robotic, but in stunning ultra definition. Her eyes, her gestures, even the way she tilted her head slightly when pausing for emphasis. Good afternoon, colleagues. The clone began. This is Margaret Wanjiru. I want to personally thank you for your ongoing support of our mission. I have an important update. Margaret's stomach twisted. The voice was eerily smooth, as if reality had been polished. Perfect diction, no hesitation. But beneath that perfection, something was missing, something human. Then came the final line of the video, as the holographic Margaret leaned slightly toward the camera with a reassuring smile. We are who we say we are. Trust that. She slammed the laptop shut, because in that moment, she understood the most dangerous part of all. They weren't just stealing money anymore. They were stealing identities, rewriting reality. And just as she sat back, trying to think through her next move, her phone vibrated again. Private call. Blocked ID. Incoming holographic request. Geneva United Nations boardroom. They were making their move. Right now, the phone vibrated again, more insistent this time. Private call. Blocked ID. Incoming holographic request. Geneva United Nations boardroom status live. Margaret's hands trembled. They were already inside. She yanked her laptop open and connected with Moses, who was monitoring real-time network activity from the operations center. They're broadcasting my hologram, she said, breath sharp and quick, to the UN board, right now. Can you intercept it? I'm trying, Moses replied, fingers flying across the keys, but they're using a peer-to-peer satellite S. Margaret pressed her fingers against her forehead. The irony wasn't lost on her. They had spent years advocating for resilient, decentralized networks for aid delivery, and now that same architecture was being used to destroy them. Can you at least watch it? She asked. Get eyes on what they're seeing. Give me 60 seconds. She didn't have 60, half a world away. In a sleek, glass-paneled conference room at the UN's Geneva headquarters, the 10-person board of donors, diplomats, and development leaders sat in quiet anticipation. A silver projector flickered to life at the head of the table. And there she was. Margaret Wanjiru, her holographic double, appeared, calm and poised, hands folded in front of her. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. The fake Margaret began. I bring urgent news. Earlier this week, our systems were breached by an unknown cyber threat. We're in possession of proof that our donor network is now a target. In response, we've secured emergency protocols. She paused just long enough to make the board lean in, including a cryptocurrency buffer fund to protect our operations. Per Anthony's guidance, we request expedited disbursement of $4 million US to a secure multi-sig wallet. You'll find the details in the encrypted link provided. It was perfectly measured, sincere. Even her eyes gleamed with just the right amount of tension. The room sat still. Then, Dr. Elena Kravtsov, a longtime supporter of the charity and one of Margaret's fiercest defenders, raised a hand. Margaret, can you clarify who authorized this crypto measure? You know, we've had legal hesitations before. The fake Margaret nodded. I understand. It was approved jointly by Anthony and myself. It's not ideal, but it's necessary. We cannot allow donor records to leak. The risk is simply too great. Back in Nairobi, Margaret was pacing like a caged animal. Got it, Moses shouted. I'm in. Audio and video feed confirmed. They've got your deepfake running live. And it's good? Real good. Patch me in, she demanded. Live. Now. Only way in is through an override. If we bounce off their signal fast enough, we might hijack the stream, but they'll know we're trying to break in. I don't care. Do it. Moses typed rapidly. Okay. Sending your real-time stream in. 3, 2, 1. The connection sputtered, then caught. In Geneva, The holographic Margaret was mid-sentence when her projection stuttered, then blurred. And suddenly, another Margaret appeared beside her. Two Margarets, one standing firm, one looking startled. The board members flinched. The real Margaret stared through the lens, heart pounding. "Don't trust her," she said firmly. "That is not me. This is a holographic impersonation. I've been cloned. Our systems were infiltrated. The initial funds have already been stolen." The fake Margaret flickered slightly, smile still intact. "This is a misinformation attempt," the clone said calmly. "Someone is exploiting our systems. Please disregard the disruption." "Shut up," Margaret snapped. "I'll prove I'm real." She reached into her jacket and held up a UN pass, her credentials, live and time-stamped. Then she did something only the real Margaret would know. "Elena," she said, locking eyes with the board member, "your granddaughter's mural is still hanging in our office in Nairobi, the one she painted on her visit in 2022, blue sky, sunflowers, and the words, 'Hope lives here.' I look at it every morning." Elena gasped. Tears welled in her eyes. The fake Margaret didn't respond. She just glitched. For a moment, her expression froze, then rapidly cycled through several programmed emotions: confusion, concern, reassurance, like a marionette with a tangled script. And then she vanished. The boardroom fell dead silent. Real Margaret stood alone now in the projection, breathing hard. That night, back in Nairobi, she sat with Moses in the darkened server room, the hum of machines masking the silence between them. "You saved them," Moses said quietly. "But they're still out there. Whoever did this, they weren't done. That was just phase one." Margaret didn't answer. She stared at the wall where their cybersecurity frame. She'd thought the worst was behind them, until Moses turned to her and said, "They've uploaded a new voice model." She blinked. "Of who?" He looked up, eyes wide. "Your daughter." Margaret didn't react at first. The words hung in the air like smoke from an unseen fire. "Your daughter." She looked at Moses, waiting for him to laugh, to walk it back, to tell her it was a mistake. But his face was pale, serious. "No," she said flatly. "That's not possible." He turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was a waveform, curves and peaks she didn't understand. But at the bottom corner, a file name stood out like blood on snow. Naomi Wanjiru, AI V1 Dawavi. Margaret's legs buckled slightly, and she gripped the edge of the table for balance. "They've been watching my daughter." Moses hesitated, then nodded. "From what I can tell, they scraped audio from your home intercom system, a few old video clips on your public Instagram account, even a voice memo you posted once on her birthday. She must be what? 12, 11, Margaret said quietly, her voice raw. Her mind reeled. Naomi had never even set foot in the Nairobi office. Margaret had worked tirelessly to keep her away from the public eye, to shield her from the harshness of the world she operated in. And now that world had found her anyway. "They're crossing a line," Margaret said through clenched teeth. "This isn't about money anymore. This is psychological warfare." Moses nodded. "It gets worse." He clicked open another file. This time, it was a partial video. The hologram flickered to life on screen. Naomi, her hair tied back in the lopsided ponytail Margaret always did for school, sat smiling sweetly in front of a pastel-colored background. Her voice, high and innocent, rang out clearly. "Hi, Mommy. I need your help. The men came back, and I'm scared. They said not to tell anyone. Please send the money." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. "Jesus," she whispered. "They made this to manipulate me." Moses clicked pause. This is how they trap their next victims. They're not just spoofing identities, they're preying on emotion. And if they target someone else with this version of your daughter, maybe a donor, a staff member, they won't question it. Margaret sank into a chair. They're turning love into a weapon. For the next hour, the two worked in silence, side by side. Margaret issued immediate security directives. All personal social media profiles were locked down. Staff were instructed to remove any public-facing content that could be AI scraped. She contacted Naomi's school, ensuring no unknown visitors could get near her. Meanwhile, Moses dug deeper. "This isn't random," he murmured. "The structure, the attack pattern. It feels directed, like they know exactly who to go after. Like they're inside," Margaret finished. He looked up. "You're saying it's an inside job, or someone who used to be inside," she said. "Someone with access to old credentials. Someone who knows how we operate, who we trust, who we listen to." And then she remembered something. An ex-contractor, disgruntled, fired last year after being caught accessing donor data without permission. He disappeared after a disciplinary hearing, vanished without legal follow-up due to insufficient evidence. His name had surfaced once since tied to a Telegram channel flagged for recruiting AI engineers on the dark web. "Jacob," she said aloud. Moses blinked. "Jacob Tumbo." She nodded. At that moment, her phone lit up again. Unknown number, no caller ID. Video request, pending. She froze. The preview window flickered open without her accepting. Naomi's face, live, crying, whispering. "They said they'll hurt you if you don't do what they say." Margaret lunged to kill the feed, but it persisted until Moses yanked the entire machine from the LAN. Silence. Then a single line of text appeared on the blacked-out screen. "Phase 2 begins at dawn. Naomi doesn't need to be real if you believe she is." Margaret stared, rage blooming like fire in her chest. They weren't just copying reality anymore. They were replacing it. The sun rose over Nairobi like nothing had changed, soft golden light spilling across the rooftops. Matatus honking in the distance. Street vendors setting up shop beneath trees, heavy with dew. But inside the charity's headquarters, everything felt wrong, tense, quiet. Margaret hadn't slept. Neither had Moses. They watched the clock tick toward 60A, waiting for Phase 2. Neither knew what that meant, only that it was coming. "Tell me what we know," Margaret said. Her voice brittle. Moses rubbed his eyes. "Bloodshot and red. Their infrastructure is designed to trigger across multiple time zones. We've traced fragments of code that suggest simultaneous holographic intrusions. Not just you, not just Anthony. They're scaling this. Scaling it how?" He turned his laptop toward her. It displayed a web of organizations, NGOs, aid groups, human rights councils. At least 7 were flashing red. Every one of these institutions received some form of suspicious contact in the past 48 hours. Voice notes, fake Dropbox links, invitations to virtual, urgent board meetings. All from familiar names. Margaret leaned in. "These are our partners," she whispered. "If they fall for it, they'll lose millions," Moses said. "Or worse, they'll act on instructions they believe came from us. And someone might get hurt." She felt the weight settle deep in her chest. It wasn't just about their charity anymore. This was a coordinated disinformation assault on the humanitarian sector itself. A precision attack, aimed at undermining global trust. "Why would someone do this?" she asked. "We're not banks. We're not governments." Moses looked up slowly. "We're easier. We're trusted. And when we fall, we take the people we protect down with us." At 6:03 a.m., the first alert came in. "Emergency call request, International Relief Forum, Berlin office, holographic session activated." Then another. "Incoming transmission, water for Sudan, Geneva HQ." A third. "Encrypted login attempt, the Refugee Media Coalition, Paris Division." Margaret's pulse thundered. They're launching simultaneously. They're impersonating us to everyone. She jumped to her feet. "Get me a direct channel to Berlin. I know their director personally, Annika Voigt. If they're on a call, I can interrupt it." Moses began typing furiously, bouncing the connection through encrypted Kenyan servers. The holographic relay took longer this time, deliberately throttled, no doubt. Whoever was behind this knew they'd been discovered, and they were buying time. The holographic link sputtered to life. On screen, a Berlin conference room flickered into focus. Annika, blonde hair pulled back, brow furrowed in confusion as she watched a 3D projection of Margaret and Anthony addressing the room. "This second-level protocol is non-negotiable," the fake Anthony was saying. "If we don't act now, donor records could be leaked by the end of the week. We've already authorized your share of the crypto transfer," fake Margaret added smoothly. "Please complete your side." Anika nodded, visibly uncertain. This isn't standard." Margaret's voice cut through the signal. "Annika, don't trust them." The feed jerked. Two Margarets now stood on screen, one pleading, the other poised, the same face, the same suit. But only one looked terrified. "It's me," Margaret cried. "The real me. You know that blue jacket you borrowed when you visited Nairobi during the floods? I never got it back. It's still in your suitcase." Anika's eyes widened. She reached down, pulled open her bag beneath the desk, and there it was. Folded. Forgotten. She stared at it, then back at the projection. The fake Margaret glitched just slightly and vanished. The room fell silent. Back in Nairobi, Margaret slumped into a chair, adrenaline draining from her body. "One down," Moses said. "6 more partners are still being targeted." "Then we keep going," she said. But even as she spoke, Moses's screen flashed with a new alert. His expression darkened. "What is it?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "They've changed tactics." He turned the screen toward her. This time, there was no hologram, no voice clip, no impersonation. Just a single message posted on every partner organization's Twitter, Facebook, and internal communication channel, each one from a verified Margaret Wanjiru account. "The truth will come out. We've been laundering donor money for years. Prepare your audits." Margaret stared at the words as if they were knives. Her credibility, their entire legacy, was under attack. They weren't just stealing voices anymore. They were fabricating confessions. Margaret stood before the screen, unmoving. The fake confession falsely claiming she had laundered donor money was spreading like wildfire across social media. Retweets, comments, reposts with red circles and clickbait headlines. "Charity CEO admits massive fraud. Shocking confession, millions. Misused by humanitarian group." The post had been shared over 40,000 times in under an hour. "They're not even pretending anymore," Moses said grimly. "They're not hiding behind holograms now. They're rewriting reality in plain sight." The damage was instant and global. Donors began pulling out. One corporate sponsor posted a statement suspending their partnership pending investigation. A major East African newspaper ran the headline, "Wanjiru's Double Life." Margaret could barely breathe. Her phone buzzed with panicked messages. Staff, volunteers, reporters, even her daughter's school. She opened a new message from Naomi's homeroom teacher. "Is everything okay?" Naomi is crying. She says people online are saying, "You're going to jail." Margaret's hands curled into fists. "I'm done playing defense," she said. "They want to use my name to destroy what we built. Let's find them and end it." Moses was already on the move. "I found something," he said, his voice low but sharp, buried in the metadata of the forged confession posts. It's faint, almost noise, but the same tag shows up in every post. He zoomed in on a string of garbled text, nestled between 2 layers of metadata. A digital fingerprint, JXT6 NVEL 0PE Violet. A tracking signature, Margaret asked, more like a watermark. "Whoever built the AI system that generated your voice, your face, this tag was embedded in the output, and you can trace it." Moses gave a tight nod. "Only if we're lucky." The next 6 hours passed in tense, caffeine-fueled silence. The office lights flickered as the servers whirred and hummed, tracing digital footprints through hidden corners of the internet. Moses followed the watermark across dark web forums, abandoned GitHub repositories, and a VPN chain that snaked from Malaysia to Belarus to Ghana, until, finally, they founded a dormant AI modeling project hosted on a defunct research site. The code was incomplete except for one directory. Inside was a README file titled Violet. Moses opened it, revealing a short note, written in blunt, technical language. Voice-integrated, lifelike entity trainer. Violet Gen 3 hologram simulation layer. Final test case subject Wanjiru. Margaret live model. Seed data acquired via Nairobi node. Phase 2 escalation confirm. They stared at the screen. Margaret whispered. They tested it. On me. This wasn't random. Moses replied. You weren't a victim of convenience. You were target 0. Margaret felt the blood drain from her face. Then who built this? Moses paused, then turned to the screen again. There, tucked beneath the README file, was the creator's GitHub handle. Erti Jasurabi, her breath caught Jacob Tumbo, their former data contractor, the one they'd let go a year ago after he was caught accessing internal donor logs. He had vanished without a trace. Until now, I want to speak to him, Margaret said. You think he'll talk? No, she replied. But I know where he will be. She pulled up a calendar from a private, unlisted email server, used only by former staff, a channel Jacob had once had access to. There, still listed from long ago, was a biannual Nairobi tech meetup, a hush-hush event for gray hat coders and AI tinkerers who didn't fit neatly into legal boxes. Next meetup tonight, 8:00 p.m. Rooftop of the East District parking tower. It wasn't official, it wasn't advertised, but if Jacob was still watching her, he'd expect her to go. And that's exactly why she would. That night, under the dim orange haze of street lamps, Margaret stood alone on the rooftop. She wore no suit, no lanyard, just jeans and a hoodie. Not Margaret the CFO, not Margaret the leader, just Margaret the mother, the human being who had had enough. Footsteps echoed from behind a ventilation duct. And then he appeared, tall, hoodie pulled tight, face partially shadowed. Jacob, she said. He stopped, arms loose at his sides. You shouldn't have come here. I should have come here a year ago, she replied. Before this became a war. A pause. Then Jacob stepped into the light. His eyes were tired, but not cruel. Behind them was something deeper. Guilt, regret. Why me? She asked softly. Jacob looked at her, unblinking, because they said they wanted to expose the system. But all they wanted was to own the truth. Then he dropped something at her feet. A flash drive. Everything's on there. Violet. Backdoor keys. Target lists. But once you use it, they'll know. Who's they? Jacob looked past her, as if listening for footsteps that hadn't yet arrived. You'll know them soon enough. And then he vanished into the shadows. Margaret didn't move for several seconds after Jacob disappeared into the night. The flash drive sat cold in her palm, barely an ounce in weight, but it felt like it carried the gravity of the world. Inside it was everything: the keys to the holographic engine, the codebase of Violet, and the targets they had yet to ruin. It wasn't just about stopping a scam anymore. It was about stopping a new kind of truth from being rewritten again and again until reality itself became a puppet for whoever had the best algorithm. She tucked the drive into her jacket and walked quickly to the elevator, pulse pounding. Back at the Nairobi HQ, Moses was waiting. They didn't say a word as they plugged the drive into a quarantined offline machine. Air gapped from everything else. The screen lit up with directories: Violet mainframe, clone logs, target protocols, fail-safe. And then, at the bottom of the list, Genesis trigger. Open clone logs, Margaret said. Inside, rows of folders revealed how much the Violet system had harvested. Thousands of hours of video, voice, and biometric data scraped from social media, webinars, podcasts, and private calls. Not just hers, not just Anthony. They'd modeled dozens of global nonprofit leaders, activists, diplomats, even journalists. And there, at the top of the list, Wanjiru, Margaret v4.6 stable release, Naomi, Wanjiru, child v2.3 beta, Anthony, Otieno v3.9 live deployed. She looked away. They were building a full fleet of synthetic identities, Moses said. They were going to impersonate everyone. A complete mirror of the humanitarian world, controlled by code. Margaret opened the target protocols folder. Each name was paired with a timeline down to the minute. When the clone would appear, what they would say, what confessions would be posted, which crypto addresses would be used. There were thousands of dollars still sitting in wallets marked Next Phase. The machine didn't just steal identities. It managed reputations, fabricated crises, pre-scripted redemption arcs, all controllable, like digital gods playing with avatars. Then they opened the final file, failsafe. It was a single-line command, system-wide execute, kill switch, destroy all instances, burn, chain, true. But beside it was a warning. This action is irreversible. Violet will be wiped. All model data unrecoverable. Margaret stared at it. This was it. Pressing that button would delete every synthetic version of her, of Anthony, of Naomi. The clones would vanish, but so would the proof of what had happened. The crime would remain in whispers, screenshots, broken finances, broken reputations, and no court on earth was ready for evidence that looked more real than reality. Moses looked at her. We could archive it, leak it, let the world see what this thing really is. She shook her head. They won't believe it. Not until it happens to them. And by then, it's too late. He hesitated. Are you sure? She took a breath. I lost my voice once. I won't lose it again. And she pressed enter. The screen flickered. The command ran. One by one, the clones began collapsing in digital flames, model files erasing, logs being overwritten. The very architecture of Violet turning to ash. And just like that, the system that stole truth died quietly on a single screen, in a room no bigger than a kitchen. 2 days later, the world kept spinning. The charity issued a statement. The fake confessions were officially labeled as cyber attacks. A few donors returned. Some never would. Margaret stood outside Naomi's school gate as the bell rang and children spilled into the warm afternoon light. Naomi came running up, arms outstretched. Mom. Margaret bent down and hugged her tightly longer than usual. Everything okay now? Naomi asked, eyes wide and innocent. Not everything, Margaret said, but no one else gets to speak for me anymore. A week later, Moses sent her one last encrypted message. Inside was a screenshot from a darknet forum. A new post had gone live. Violet may be dead, but she had sisters, Bliss, Harlow, Mona. We rebuild. You can't delete an idea. Margaret stared at the screen. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Like stories that reveal the darker side of technology, drop a comment below and tell us what you would have done in Margaret's place. Subscribe for more true crime meets tech thrillers. And don't forget to turn on notifications before someone turns on a fake version of you.